All right. Oh, it's so hard to do two book readings a day. Oh my goodness. Um. So, Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell. I just right now read The Enchantress Returns. That's why I'm saying it's kind of hard to read two books a day, but I will do it for you kids. All right. All right. Do you guys remember what happened? At the end of chapter 4. I'll read the last paragraph. Alex! Connor cried out to his sister. He jumped to the ground, trying to grab her foot before she disappeared entirely, but it was too late. Alex had fallen into the land of stories. Ooh, she fell into the book. I hope she's okay. I hope it didn't hurt. Let's see what happens. What do you guys think? Chapter 5 is called From the Mouth of a Frog. Wait, why is it frog? But Alex is not even there. Wait. What do you guys think Connor's going to do? Do you think Connor's going to go after her or call the cops? I don't know. Throw the book away? Tell mom? I don't know. There's so many things to do, right? Let's see. Alex was no longer in her bedroom. She was falling into a world of light. She fell farther and farther, faster and faster. She was dizzy and scared. She screamed out for help but couldn't hear her own voice. Would she ever stop falling? Was she going to die? Was she dead? She wondered if she would ever see her family again. She could hear birds chirping and trees blowing in the wind. The noise seemed to get closer and closer, but she just kept falling and falling, not knowing where she was falling to. Ouch! Alex said, hitting the ground. Her impact was hard enough to hurt, but not hard enough to seriously injure her. Had it not been for the rough landing, she would have thought she was dreaming for sure. Alex quickly got to her feet. She felt her pulse to make sure her heart was still working. She was still alive. From what she could tell. She was so thankful to have finally stopped falling, but where exactly had she fallen to? She was standing on a dirt path in the middle of a thick forest. The trees were tall and dark and bright, with bright green moss covering their trunks. The sun's rays shined through a light mist. Birds squawked from high in the trees, and if she listened closely enough, she could hear a tiny stream in the distance. What does that mean? Stream in a distance? It's always a good sign, right? There's water. If there's water, there's life, right? But where do you think Alex is right now, guys? Where do you think she is? All right, well, let me keep reading. Alex spun around, looking in all directions. Her breathing increased as she took in her new surroundings. Well, she wasn't home anymore, right? Was she overreacting? Or not reacting enough to what had just happened? And what exactly had just happened? She looked up to see if there was an opening she had fallen through, hoping to see some sort of window into her bedroom. But all she saw were tree branches, and the sky above her. Where am I? She asked herself. Ah! As if he had fallen right out of thin air, Connor landed on the ground beside his sister. He was pale and screaming, and his limbs were stretched out in all directions. Am I alive? Am I dying? Am I dead? He asked from the ground with his eyes tightly closed. You're alive, Alex told him. She had never been so happy to see him. Alex, is that you? Connor asked. He slowly opened his eyes one at a time, and he looked around. Where are we? He asked as she helped him to his feet. It looks like some kind of a forest, she said. It was unlike any forest they had ever seen, in real life at least. The colors were so vivid and the air was so crisp. It was as if they had fallen into a painting Alex was positive she had seen before. Look, Connor said, pointing to the ground. All of our pencils! The path was littered with pencils Alex had been dropping into the book all week. She also found her school bag and a few of her dirty socks in the middle of the mess. But where were all the books she had dropped into the land of stories? So this is where they all went, Alex said. But where is here? Connor asked. How far away from home are we? Alex couldn't answer him. She was starting to become just as worried as he was. They were worse than lost. This is all your fault, Alex, he said. My fault, Alex yelled. We wouldn't be here if you had just knocked on my door instead of barging in like the house was on fire. I knew you were planning this, Connor said. I had to stop you. I wasn't planning on going into the book. I was just testing it out, Alex said. You didn't have to follow me here. Oh, sure. Was I supposed to just leave you in the book by yourself? Alex exclaimed. What was I supposed to tell Mom when she got home? Hi, Mom. Hope you had a good day at work. Alex fell through the book. By the way, what's for dinner? Give me a break. Connor began jumping upward as high as he could. What are you doing? Alex asked. We fell from somewhere up here. There's got to be a way back, he said, but all his jumping was pointless. Connor eventually tired himself out and took a seat on the ground against the tree trunk. What if we were transported to another country or something? Connor asked. His forehead became more wrinkled the further he thought about it. What if it took us to Canada or Mongolia or somewhere? How long is it gonna take for Mom or someone to find us? Suddenly, the ground started shaking. A powerful rumbling had consumed the forest. The trees and the branches of the trees shook, and the small rock on the ground began jumping as something massive moved closer to them. What's happening now? Connor yelled. Let's take cover, Alex said. She grabbed her bag and the twins ran off the path into the forest a little way and took refuge behind a particularly wide tree. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A huge cavalcade of soldiers and white horses rode past them. Their armor was clean and shiny. They carried green and silver shields and large red apples painted on them and waved flags with the same design. Alex, do we go back in time? Connor anxiously asked his sister. That looks like something straight out of medieval times. The pencils were all obliterated under the horses' hooves. The soldiers were moving at such fast and forceful pace that none of them noticed the awestruck twins peeking out from behind the tree. Alex was fixated on their shields. A red apple was such an odd thing to be displayed on a shield. But there was something so familiar about it. She couldn't put her finger on it. What do you guys think it is? The rumbling slowly faded away as the soldiers disappeared down the dirt path. The twins both stayed behind the tree for a few moments, making sure the coast was clear. I don't know about you, but I had about as much excitement as I could handle for one day, Connor told Alex. A poster pinned to a nearby tree caught Alex's eye. She walked over and pulled it off the tree for further inspection. It was old with faded writing, and a picture of a disgruntled-looking little girl with curly blonde hair was centered on it. The poster read, Wanted, dead or alive, Goldilocks, for burglary, thievery, and running from the law. You guys remember Goldilocks? What did she do? This bed's too hard. This bed's too soft. This bed is perfect. Remember she went to a house, right? Let's see. Alex's face went white, and she stopped breathing for a moment, and she realized where they were. No wonder the trees had been so recognizable. She had seen pictures of them so many times growing up. The book had taken them to the exact place she had hoped. Is it possible, she asked herself? The wheels in her head had never spun as fast as they were now. Is what possible? Connor asked. Do you know where we are? I think so, Alex told him. Where? Connor asked, fearing the answer. Connor, we went into the book, she explained. But he wasn't following her. I think we're actually in the land of stories. How many of you actually wish you could go inside a storybook? Oh, I wish that so many times. She handed him the wanted poster, and he read it. His eyes grew as wide as a lemur's. No, this cannot be happening. This is crazy, he said, shaking his head. He handed the poster back to his sister as if it were infected with rabies. He couldn't believe what she was saying. He didn't want to believe what she was saying. Are you telling me we're in a fairy tale world? I'd recognize this forest anywhere. It's straight out of Grandma's book, Alex said with an unplanned smile. It makes perfect sense. Where else would it have taken us? We just fell through a book. Nothing makes sense, Connor said. So, are we stuck here or what? How do we get home? I don't have all the answers, Connor, Alex said. Don't forget, all of this just happened to me too. Connor began pacing around the trees with his hands on his hips. I can't believe I ditched attention and wound up in another dimension, he said. Alex was rather grateful her brother had come after her. They had lived together all their lives and had been in the same classroom since kindergarten. She didn't know if she could handle being in a different dimension by herself. I hope you're happy, Alex, Connor said. I told you we should have thrown the book into the creek. Enough with the blaming, Alex said. It doesn't matter how we got here. The point is, we're here now. What matters is finding someone who can help us get home. Excuse me, may I help you? Said a proper voice behind the twins. They jolted at the sound of another voice besides their own. They turned around to see who it had come from, and once they knew, they both wished they hadn't. Who do you guys think it is? Someone evil? Someone bad? Could it be the evil queen now that they're in the book? I don't know. Standing behind Alex and Connor was what could best be described as a frogman. He was tall, with a wide face, big glossy eyes, and shiny green skin. He wore a dapper three-piece suit and carried a large glass jar of lily pads. Forgive me for eavesdropping, but I'm rather good with directions if you need some, he said with a very wide smile. Alex and Connor were so petrified that they were paralyzed. If they needed any more evidence that they were in a fairy tale world, this was their proof. You look awfully young to be in a forest by yourselves, the frogman said. Are you lost? Connor let out a high-pitched squeal that lasted much longer than it should have. Please don't eat us, he said, and dropped to the ground in a fetal position. The frogman looked down at him with a frown. Young man, I have no intention of eating you, he said. Is he always like this? The frogman asked Alex. Alex responded with a squeal almost identical to the one her brother had made. I know, don't worry. I'm used to people screaming at me, the frogman had told them. Get it out of your systems. The shock will only last a minute. We're sorry, Alex finally managed to say. It's just that where we're from, there aren't many, frog people. Sorry if that isn't the politically correct term for what you are. Connor let out another high-pitched noise. It wasn't a scream this time, but it was embarrassing nonetheless. The frogman studied their faces and paid special attention to their clothes. Where exactly are you from? Pretty far from here, Alex said. A piercing set of wolf howls echoed through the forest. All three of them jumped at the sound. The frogman looked around the trees with fear in his big, glossy eyes. It's getting dark, the frogman said. We better get inside. Please follow me home. It's just a few minutes walk from here. Nice try, Connor said. The wolf howls echoed again. This time they were much louder than the first. Wherever the wolves were, they were getting closer. I know I look scary now, said the frogman to the twins, but I'm nothing compared to some of the creatures that lurk around these woods at night. I promise I will not harm you. There was such concerns in his eyes, it was hard not to trust him. The frogman took off at a brisk walk deeper into the forest. Alex nudged Connor. We'd better follow him. What do you guys think? Is that a good idea? I don't know. We'd better follow him. Are you crazy? I'm not going home with that giant frog, Connor whispered to him. What do we have to lose? Alex said. Besides our lives, Connor said. But despite his protest, he was dragged up by his sister and pulled in the direction the frogman was leading them. The twins hurried behind the frogman for a good while. They zigzagged between the trees and jumped over boulders and tree roots that stuck from the ground. The deeper they went into the forest, the thicker the trees became. It got dark very quickly and was almost pitch black by the time they reached the frogman's home. Alex and Connor stayed close together. With every step, they second-guessed if they had made a smart choice going with this strange creature. This way, he said. The frogman brushed aside some dead vines growing over a large wooden door that camouflaged into the side of a small hill. He pulled the door open and led the hesitant twins underground. He looked back in the forest, making sure they hadn't been followed, before shutting the door behind him. It was very dark underground. Alex and Connor were so close together they could have been mistaken for Siamese twins. Forgive the mess. I wasn't expecting company, the frogman apologized and lit a lamp with a match. Alex and Connor didn't know what to expect of the frogman's home, but they were definitely... sorry. Oh my gosh. Alex and Connor didn't know what to expect of the frogman's home, but they But what they were seeing definitely wasn't it. They were in a large room with dirt. Can you guys visualize this? With dirt walls and a low dirt ceiling. Roots from the tree growing above them grew down like a chandelier. A cluster of big, cushy chairs and sofas made of the cushions had the stuffing sticking out of them. Sat in the center of the room were angled to face a small fireplace. Nearby, teacups and pots hung from hooks over the tiny kitchenette. To Alex's delight, there were books everywhere. Shelves of books lined the dirt walls. Piles of books were stacked on every available surface and on the ground. It was as if the room were infested with literature. Connor, Alex whispered to him, close to him, look around this place. It's like we're having our own Lucy and Mr. Tumnus moment. Connor looked around and saw what she meant. If he offers us Turkish delight, I don't care what you say, we're getting out of here, she whispered back. Or he whispered back. It's a little dirty, but it's cozy, the frogman said. It's hard to find a landlord who will house a frog, so I did the best I could with what I had. He placed the jar of lily pads on the mantel and immediately started a fire in the fireplace. He filled a tea kettle with water from a pitcher, placed it over the fire, and took a seat in a big white chair closest to it. He crossed his legs and folded his hands neatly in his lap. He was one proper frog. Please have a seat, the frogman said, gesturing to the sofa in front of him. The twins reluctantly did as he asked. The sofa was rather lumpy, so they had to shift around in their seats to get comfortable. What are you? Connor asked the frog. Connor, don't be rude, said his sister, elbowing to his side. It's quite all right, the frogman said with a complicated smile. I understand my appearance takes some time to get used to. Even I haven't fully adapted to it yet. You mean you weren't always, frog person? Alex asked politely as she could. Heavens, no, the frogman said. I was cursed years ago by a very aggressive witch. Why? Alex said. She was fascinated by how casually he said it. To teach me a lesson, I suppose, the frogman told her. I used to be a very vain young man. The witch transformed my appearance so I would lose all the things I took for granted. The wide smile softly faded. It had obviously been a very long and painful experience for him, and he still had a sad sense of loss and longing about him. The twins had never seen a frog look so sad. Hi, Emerson. That's okay that you're late again. This story you've already heard, so that's okay. I can't imagine what that must have been like, said Alex, beaming with sympathy. Can we call you Froggy? Connor asked him with a small smirk. Connor, Alex reprimanded. It's quite all right, the frogman nodded, and his smile returned. I learned that the more people embrace their disadvantages, the less disadvantaged they become. Please call me Froggy. I'd prefer it. Connor shrugged and smiled. May I get you some lily pad tea? Froggy asked the twins. Both the twins nodded. They didn't want to be rude. Froggy retrieved the tea kettle from the fire and hopped, literally, to the kitchenette and poured water into 3 teacups. He opened the jar on the mantel and dropped a lily pad into each teacup and stirred. Do either of you take flies with your tea? He asked, reaching for another jar on his mantel. And dropped a lily pad into each teacup and stirred. Oh, sorry, I lost my place. Do either of you take flies with your tea? He asked, reaching for another jar on his mantel. This one filled with dead flies. No thanks, Connor said, trying to quit. Suit yourself, Froggy said, and dropped a few flies into his tea. He handed them each a teacup and reseated himself across from them. They stared down at it for a few moments before deciding they'd at least pretend to drink it. What are your names? Froggy asked the twins. I'm Alex. This is my brother Connor. A large and happy smile came to Froggy's face. Are you, by any chance, Alex Bailey? Froggy asked, grinning from ear equivalent to ear equivalent. Yes, Alex was shocked. How did this amphibian know who she was? As in, this book belongs to Alex Bailey? Froggy asked. He leaned over to the side of his chair and pulled up a stack of books, opening one to show where the phrase was written inside it. Those are my books, Alex said excitedly, recognizing the books she had dropped into the land of stories. I was wondering what happened to them. It was so peculiar, Froggy explained. I was out collecting flies and was walking down the path to the swamp when one just fell from the sky and landed on my head. I returned the next day and found several more in the same spot. It was the oddest thing that's ever happened to me. You mean besides being turned into a frog, right? Connor asked. Because if I were you, that would be on the top of my list. Ouch. Alex elbowed her. Froggy ignored Connor and went on with his explanation. As you can see from my shelves, I love to collect books, especially when I'm not expecting to, he said. And these books were unlike any I've ever read. They describe people and places I have never seen or heard of, and I thought I had seen it all. The authors wrote about such interesting places. Can you imagine a world without witches or trolls or giants? What imaginations! So they're kind of reversed, huh? Froggy chuckled at the thought of this. The twins laughed along with the best fake laughs they could muster. Please keep them. I have duplicate copies at home, Alex told him. Froggy was delighted to hear this. Uh-huh, Connor cleared his throat. Speaking of home, I don't mean to interrupt this little book club, but we're very lost and would like to know where we are. Froggy's glossy eyes went back and forth between the twins, watching them closely. Sorry, guys. My voice is drawing like crazy because this is like my third read. My first read was The Enchantress Return, Chapter 5, and I realized I was muted the whole time, so I had to re-record it myself. And then that was my second read, and this is now my third read, so my voice is a little bit raspy right now. Oh, children, you wouldn't be here if you knew where you were, Froggy said. You're in the dwarf forests. He had expected to get some sort of worried reaction from the twins, but Alex and Connor just stared up at him with very little expression. The dwarf forests? Alex asked. What are the dwarf forests? You never heard of them? Alex asked, completely appalled. The twins both shook their heads. It's a very dangerous place, Froggy told them. It's the only designated area of land without a ruler or a government. You guys have to remember this place, okay? Dwarf forest. It's the only designated area of land without a ruler or a government. It's a kingdom where everyone is their own king. It used to be populated by dwarfs who worked in the mines, but now it's full of criminals and fugitives mostly. It's a place where people go when they don't want to be found, knowing that they had not only traveled into another world, but were in a dangerous part of the world, did nothing but help the twins' anxiety level. Are there other kingdoms? Alex asked. Froggy was stunned. It was as if she had asked him what color the sky was. However, he seemed to be enjoying their unfamiliarity. Of course, he said. There's the Northern Kingdom, the Sleeping Kingdom, the Charming Kingdom, the Corner Kingdom, the Fairy Kingdom, the Red Riding Hood Kingdom, the Elf Empire, the Dwarf Forest, and the Troll and Goblin Territory. There's 9, right? There's 9 territories. How can you possibly not know this? This was difficult for the twins to wrap their heads around. How big was this fairy tale world? Their puzzled faces inspired Froggy to hop out of his seat and cross to one of the bookshelves and return with a large rolled-up scroll. He handed the twins, and they unrolled it. It was a large detailed map of the new world they were in. The fairy tale world was a wide continent bordered by mountain ranges and covered in forests and castles and palaces and villages and scattered all around. The Northern Kingdom was the largest of the kingdoms and took up most of the top of the map. The second largest kingdom was a Charming Kingdom spread across the south, and the third largest was a Sleeping Kingdom which stretched along the east, and the dwarf forest covered the majority of the west. The tiny Corner Kingdom was tucked away in the southwest corner of the continent, in the northwest corner of the Elf Empire. In between the Charming Kingdom and the Sleeping Kingdom and the Fairy Kingdom was just above was the Troll and Goblin Territory. The Fairy Kingdom looked beautiful, as if it were very colorful and seemed to sparkle on the map. The Troll and Goblin Territory looked frightening and appeared to be surrounded by large boulders and rocks, preventing anything from going in and coming out. You guys kind of have to kind of remember this. If you could kind of draw out the map, that'd be kind of cool. Actually, if anybody ever wants to draw out that map and email it to me, I'll actually show it. My email is cca3854@lausd.net. And if you email it to me, I could actually post it and show it to you guys, okay? Oh, and share it with everybody on our next reading, okay? All right. Where was I? Okay. In the very center of it all was the Red Riding Hood kingdom, circled by an unmistakable brick wall of gigantic proportions. Alex and Connor wouldn't believe it. The world they had grown up hearing about was real. It was all real, and it was bigger and better than they could have ever imagined. Alex couldn't help but get emotional. Tears began to flood her eyes. Together, all the kingdoms create a happily ever after assembly, Froggy explained. The happily ever after assembly? Connor asked, with a slight touch of sarcasm in his voice. It's the organization formed to uphold the treaty all the rulers signed so that all the kingdoms could live in peace and prosperity, Froggy told them. Sounds like our United Nations, Alex whispered to Connor. All the kingdoms have our own traditions and celebrated histories, Froggy went on. And there are kings and queens, I'm assuming, Connor asked. Oh, yes, Froggy said. The Northern Kingdom is ruled by Queen Snow White. The Corner Kingdom is ruled by Queen Rapunzel. The Sleeping Kingdom, who do you guys think? Of course, formerly known as the Eastern Kingdom, but renamed after the dreadful curse under which it was placed, is governed by Queen Sleeping Beauty. And of course, the Charming Kingdom, you guys know? Of course, is ruled by King Charming and his wife, Queen Cinderella. Remember his name used to be Prince Charming when he was younger? Wait, are these the current monarchs? Alex asked with a spark of excitement in her eyes. You mean Cinderella, Snow White, and Sleeping Beauty? They're still alive? Of course they are, Froggy said. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful, Alex said excitedly. Isn't that wonderful, Connor? Whatever, Connor mumbled. How old do you think they are? Froggy asked. Queen Snow White and King Charming have only been married a few years. Queen Cinderella and King Charming are expecting their first child soon, and Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Charming are sadly still trying to restore their kingdom to consciousness after that horrible sleeping spell it was placed under. Wait, Connor said. Are you saying all these queens are married to the same guy? Certainly not, Froggy said. There are 3 King Charmings. They're brothers. Oh, of course, Alex said. Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty all married Prince Charming. There's more than one. How come I never thought about that? Connor's eyes were fixated on the map. He kept searching for some kind of road or bridge that would lead them back home, but he found nothing. Why are there a bunch of rocks around troll and goblin territory? Connor asked. As punishment, Froggy said. Trolls and goblins are nasty creatures and have a habit of kidnapping people and turning them into slaves. The Fairy Council forced the trolls and goblins into one territory, and none of them are allowed to leave without permission. Fairy Council? Alex nodded. This world was almost too good to be true. Yes, they're a group of the most powerful fairies of the kingdoms, Froggy explained. Cinderella's fairy godmother is one of them, and so is Mother Goose, and all the fairies that blessed Sleeping Beauty when she was a baby are on it too. They rule the fairy kingdom, and are the rulers of the happily ever after assembly. Ooh, I'm getting tired of reading. Is the Red Riding Hood kingdom under some sort of punishment too? Connor asked. Why is there a huge wall built around it? Alex looked down at the map and back up at Froggy, equally curious. That was a result of the Crawl Revolution, Froggy said. What is a Crawl Revolution? The citizen riots against Wolf Assembly, Froggy explained. The Red Riding Hood Kingdom used to be a group of villages in the Northern Kingdom that was constantly under attack by wolves. They begged the Evil Queen, Snow White's stepmother, who was on the throne at the time, to help them. But the Evil Queen was too occupied with her vanity that they revolted and started their own kingdom. They built a huge wall around it so no wolves could get in. And now Red Riding Hood is the queen? Alex asked. Yes, she's the only elected queen in history, Froggy said. The villagers figured her story was the most symbolic of their struggle, so they chose her to lead them. But isn't she just a little girl? Alex asked. No, she's a young woman now. A very self obsessed young woman, from what I hear. After all, she named the kingdom after herself. Her grandmother just does most of the decision making while she takes all the credit, Froggy said. Under the Crawl Revolution only led to the rise of the Big Bad Wolf Pack. The Big Bad Wolf Pack? Oh, sorry. Unfortunately, the Crawl Revolution only led to the rise of the Big Bad Wolf Pack. The Big Bad Wolf Pack, Connor asked. Yes, they're the descendants of the original Big Bad Wolf. They travel around terrorizing villages and attacking unsuspecting travelers, Froggy said. Oh, joy, Connor said sarcastically. I'm sorry I asked. Emerson, you remember the Big Bad Wolf Pack? Not something fun to meet, right? But besides that, things are very peaceful throughout the kingdoms, Froggy said. His voice drifted off and certainly grew on his face. That was until a week ago. The twins leaned forward. What happened a week ago? Alex asked. The evil queen escaped from the dungeons of Snow White's palace, Froggy told them. I thought everyone had heard. It's news to us, Connor said. That can't be good, Alex said. How'd she escape? No one knows, Froggy said. She just vanished, along with her magic mirror. Snow White's army had been searching throughout all of the kingdoms for her. They passed through these woods at least twice a day. So far, they found nothing, not even a footprint to lead in a direction. Do you think they're going to find her? Connor asked. I hope so, Froggy said. She's a very dangerous woman. She's the only queen in history to lose her throne. I couldn't imagine the revenge she must be seeking. Who knows what she's planning to do next? And suddenly they become very tense. It had just occurred to her that, along with all the characters she had grown up loving, all the ones she hated and feared actually existed too. It made her feel very uneasy and unsafe. The fire in the fireplace began to fade, and Froggy got up to add another log. The twins' eyes and mouths were wide open, and their heads were spinning from all of the new information. Exactly how far away do you live from here? Froggy asked as he sat down across from them. The twins looked up at each other. Oops, sorry. The twins looked up at each other. Back at Froggy. Oh my goodness gracious, there's so many pop-ups. Back at Froggy and then back at each other. They didn't know how to tell him. Would he believe if they told him the truth? It's practically a different world, Connor said. Alex shot him a dirty look and then nervously laughed, trying to make light of what her brother had just said. Froggy wasn't laughing. He sat straight up in his seat, and his face grew very still with an intensity in his eyes, as if he had found the solution to a mystery. Interesting, Froggy said, eyeing the twins back and forth. Because if I didn't know any better, from the way you're dressed, and the way you speak, and the way you're surprised at basic history, I would say that there was a very good chance you are indeed from a... Why is my page not turning? No. From a different world. They didn't understand what he was trying to say. Oh no! I went too far. Sorry, I think my internet's a little glitchy. It won't be tomorrow. I'll restart my computer tomorrow. Exactly how far away do you live from here? Oh, I already read that part. Oh, wait. No, I didn't. Wait, did I? No, I didn't. Okay. Exactly how far away do you live from here? Froggy asked as he sat across from them. The twins looked at each other, back at Froggy, and then back at each other. They didn't know what to tell him. Would he believe if they told him the truth? It's practically a different world, Alex said. Oh, I read this, but then the pages look so different right now. I don't know why. Okay, I'm going to start from here. They didn't understand what he was trying to say. Did he know something that they didn't? Just out of curiosity. Have you ever heard of another world? Alex asked him. Or preferably how to get back to it, Connor added. Froggy studied their faces even more intently for a moment. He got up again and went to a bookshelf on the far side of the room. He rustled through the books, looking for something of special interest. Finally, he found it. A small leather-bound journal with a red band around it. Have either of you heard of the wishing spell, Froggy asked the twins. Alex and Connor shook their heads. Froggy flipped through the pages of the journal. I assumed not, he said. It's a legendary spell comprised of a list of items, and apparently when you put the items together, you're granted one wish. It doesn't matter how extravagant the wish is. The wishing spell will grant it. Many people believe that it's only a myth, and I did too until I found this journal. What do you guys think? What would be your only one wish that you would wish if you could wish one wish? Emerson, I'll jump up there after I read some more, okay? Let's see. If you could be granted just one wish, what would you wish for? This quarantine to be over? I don't know. All right, let's see. What does that journal have to do with anything? Connor asked. It was written by a man from the Charming Kingdom, Froggy said. He managed to discover what these items were, and he recorded his journey to find them. His one wish was to reunite with the woman he loved, and in the journal he claimed she lived in another world. Alex and Connor sat straight up. They were sitting on the edges of their seats without realizing it. I thought the man writing the journal was crazy. I didn't believe another world could exist until I began finding your books, Alex. And then, when I saw you bickering in the forest, I knew you two were different, Froggy said. I knew you had to be from the place that the man had written about. The twins were happy. The truth was out. Froggy seemed genuinely excited about the whole thing. Did he make it? Alex asked. Did the man cross over into another world? He must have, Froggy said. The journal ends when he found the last item. Froggy handed the twins the journal and took a seat from his chair. Wherever you're from, if it's home that you wish to go back to, I think your best chance is by following this journal. The twins sat for a moment. They stared down at the journal in his hands. They stared down at the journal in his hands with immense hope. I guess Emerson agrees with me. He wishes that this quarantine would end too. Yeah, I know. I miss eating out. I miss seeing my kids. I miss being in my classroom. All right. What items does this spell require? Alex asked. All sorts from all over, Froggy told her, but the journal gives great instructions on where and how to find them. Some of them are very dangerous to get to. Of course they are, Connor said. Typical. If the spell will grant whatever wish you grant, why didn't you search for the items and wish to be human again? Alex asked Froggy. Froggy thought about this for a moment. It was a question he asked himself many times, and he was ashamed for the answer. I've kept the journal all these years in case I ever decided to, Froggy explained with difficulty. But searching for the items would mean I'd have to face the world looking like this. And frankly, children, that's something I'm not ready to do. It's something I don't think I'll ever be able to do. He spoke from a place of deep sadness. Clearly, he wasn't finished learning the witch's lesson yet. It's getting late, Froggy said. Why don't you sleep on it and decide what you want to do in the morning? You're welcome to stay here as long as you like. Thank you, Alex said. I hope we aren't a bother. No bother at all, Froggy smiled earnestly. Froggy got them a large blanket to share. He blew out all the lamps and put out the fire in the fireplace. Alex and Connor tossed and turned with thoughts of the wishing spell all night, but there was no decision to make. If the journal offered a possible way home, they would have to do anything and everything it instructed them to. They had no choice. They were about to embark on the greatest scavenger hunt of their lives. All right. Scavenger hunts. Those are fun, aren't they? I don't think this one's going to be very fun, though, because I don't know. Maybe they have to go to the Troll Kingdom or Troll. What's it called? Troll. They're going, well, chapter 6 is called Dwarf Forest, so I guess they're going to Dwarf Forest, huh? All right, thanks for joining, guys. I know this was a little bit long. I know that book 1, the chapters are a little bit longer than book 2. All right, I hope you're enjoying it, and don't forget to smash that like button down there. All right, Emerson? All right, I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock, okay? Bye. Bye, everybody. Bye.